Hey everyone, and welcome to the Deep Dive. Starting fresh in a new country can be a thrilling experience, but it can also feel a bit overwhelming, especially when it comes to managing your money, maybe for the first time ever.
Absolutely. There are so many new things to figure out.
Exactly. And that's where we come in
We're here to help you navigate the world of budgeting,
and make it feel less scary and way more manageable.
no matter your financial background.
You'll walk away from this deep dive feeling confident and empowered to take charge of your finances.
That's right, no prior knowledge required.
Just a willingness to learn and explore.
Because we're starting from scratch.
We'll break down even the most basic concepts in a way that's super easy to understand.
And relatable.
We've got some fantastic resources lined up for this deep dive. We'll be drawing insights from some awesome YouTube videos by The Financial Diet,
They cover common money mistakes,
the different ways to budget.
like the 50-30-20 rule, which we'll definitely unpack later.
Oh, and we also have a really insightful article about someone's personal journey with bad credit
It offers some valuable lessons about overcoming financial challenges.
and building a more secure future.
And remember, we're here to guide you every step of the way.
Ready to dive in?
Let's do it.
Okay, let's start with the fundamentals.
Mm.
What exactly is a budget?
It sounds like this big financial term.
I know, right?
But really, it's just a simple plan for your money.
Ah, okay, so it's like a roadmap.
Exactly.
Instead of my money just vanishing into thin air,
A budget helps me make conscious choices about how I spend it.
and how I save it.
Precisely.
It's about taking control.
It's like being in the driver's seat of your finances.
Even if I'm starting with a smaller income,
Exactly. That's what we want.
like I'm in control.
Which I am. You are. And the beauty of budgeting is that there are tons of different ways to do it.
Really?
So you can find a method that fits your style and your comfort level.
Awesome. So I don't have to be a math whiz to create a budget.
Not at all. You can keep it super simple with a handwritten list.
Ooh, I like that. Simple and straightforward.
Or if you're more tech savvy, you can use a spreadsheet.
Okay, cool. I'm pretty good with spreadsheets.
Or even explore budgeting apps on your phone.
Wow, there are apps for that.
There are apps for everything these days.
I'm learning so much already.
And then there's the envelope method,
Yeah.
where you actually divide your cash into different categories.
Wait, like physical envelopes?
Yep. It works for some people.
If you're a visual person, it could be helpful.
Exactly. It's all about finding what clicks for you.
So many options.
The key is to experiment and see what feels right
What feels manageable?
and what you can stick with.
Awesome. So I don't need to get bogged down with fancy techniques if I don't want to.
Not at all. The best budget is the one you'll actually use.
Okay, before we move on to specific budgeting methods, can we unpack some key concepts? I think that would be helpful for our listeners.
Absolutely.
So we often hear about income and expenses, but what do those really mean? In the context of budgeting, of course.
Great question. Income is all the money you receive. It includes your wages from work,
Of course.
maybe some gifts,
Oh, yeah, like birthday money.
or if you have a side hustle, the money you earn from that as well.
Cool. So basically, any money that comes in.
Exactly. Now, expenses are what you spend money on.
Okay.
It's things like your rent,
Rent, yes, definitely an expense. Groceries,
transportation, yeah.
bills, like utilities,
Bills.
and even those little treats you buy yourself.
Ah, can't forget those.
Those definitely count.
So it's the money coming in versus the money going out.
You got it. And the goal is to make sure my income is higher than my expenses.
Exactly.
So I have some money left over.
For saving and reaching your goals.
I like that. It's like making sure there's enough water in the bathtub.
To cover all the toys.
Okay, I see where you're going with this.
And maybe have a little extra for splashing around.
I love it.
Now, within those expenses, there's another important thing to understand. Necessary expenses versus unnecessary expenses. I'm guessing necessary expenses are things I absolutely can't live without.
You're on the right track. Necessary expenses are the essentials,
The essentials.
like your rent, basic groceries to keep you fed,
Got it.
utilities, so you have electricity and water,
Can't live without those.
and transportation to get to work or school.
Makes sense.
Basically, the things you need to survive and function in daily life.
The bare minimum.
And I'm guessing unnecessary expenses are the things that are nice to have, but not crucial for survival.
You're catching on quickly.
Thanks. I'm trying.
Unnecessary expenses are things like eating out at restaurants or going to the movies,
Movies, yeah, those can be pricey.
buying new clothes just because they're trendy.
Instead of because my old ones have holes in them.
Exactly. Or that extra fancy coffee you treat yourself to sometimes.
Oh, my weakness.
We all have them.
So it's not about depriving myself of all the fun things.
Not at all.
It's more about being mindful of how those wants can impact my overall budget.
That's the key. It's all about balance.
Finding that sweet spot.
Exactly, because those little wants can really add up if we're not careful. It's easy to overspend without even realizing it.
Especially when everything is new and exciting.
Absolutely. That's why it's so important to be intentional with our spending choices.
So it's about finding a balance between enjoying life and being responsible with my money.
You nailed it. And speaking of being responsible with our money, let's talk about savings.
Ooh, savings. This is something I'm really curious about.
Savings are like planting seeds for your future.
I like that analogy.
Even if you start with a small amount, it can grow into something much bigger over time.
That's reassuring to hear. But with all these new expenses in a new country, how do I even start saving?
It's all about forming good habits.
Okay, like what?
The best way to start saving is by paying yourself first.
Paying myself first.
It sounds a bit strange, I know.
Yeah, it does.
But it just means putting money aside for your savings goals before you spend on anything else.
So before I even think about that new jacket or a night out,
Mm-hmm.
I should put some money away in saving.
Exactly. It's a way of prioritizing your future self.
That's a great way to put it, like investing in my own dreams and goals.
Absolutely. And one of our sources mentioned a pretty startling statistic.
Oh,
39% of Americans have less than $400 in savings.
wow, that's almost half the population.
What?
Do so many people struggle with saving?
Well, it can be tough, especially when you're in a new environment, still figuring things out.
Everything's different.
You might be sending money back home to family,
That's common?
or the cost of living here might be higher than you expected.
Yeah, that's definitely something I'm experiencing, so saving might not feel like a top priority.
I understand that. But even small amounts saved consistently can make a huge difference over time.
Okay, so every little bit counts.
It does. And having some savings can give you a sense of security
Security, yeah, that's important.
and freedom, knowing you're prepared for unexpected expenses.
For opportunities.
Exactly. It's like having a safety net.
So I don't feel so vulnerable in this new place.
Precisely. And speaking of feeling vulnerable, let's talk about tracking your spending.
Ooh, tracking. That sounds a bit tedious, to be honest.
I know, it might not sound like the most exciting thing.
But why is it so important?
Think of it like solving a mystery. You're figuring out where your money is actually going, so you
Right.
can make more informed choices about your spending.
So I can see where my money's actually going.
Exactly. You might be surprised by what you discover. And those small expenses can really add up.
So tracking helps me see the bigger picture.
It does. And it doesn't have to be complicated.
Great.
You can use a simple notebook,
I like that. Keeping it old school.
or a spreadsheet,
I'm good with those.
or even a budgeting app on your phone.
So many options.
There's a tool out there for everyone.
Okay, so I've tracked my spending, and I have a clearer understanding of my income and expenses. What's next?
Now comes the fun part. Choosing a budgeting method that fits your personality and lifestyle.
Okay, well, let's get into it.
You mentioned a few different methods earlier,
I did.
like the traditional method,
Right.
the 50-30-20 rule,
Yes.
and something called reverse budgeting.
That one sounds intriguing. Can you break down the pros and cons of each?
Absolutely. So the traditional method is like creating a detailed map of your finances.
Okay, a map.
You list out all your income sources.
Every single one.
Yep. And every single expense.
Wow, that sounds pretty thorough.
It is. Then you assign specific amounts to each category.
So it's very specific.
Exactly. It's very flexible, but it requires discipline and careful tracking.
So it's good for people who are detail-oriented.
Absolutely. If you love spreadsheets and numbers, this could be a good fit.
But maybe not for someone who's brand new to budgeting.
It can feel overwhelming at first.
Okay, what about the 50-30-20 rule? That one sounds a bit simpler.
It is. The 50-30-20 rule is a great starting point.
Why is that?
It provides a clear framework.
Okay, I like that.
You divide your after-tax income into 3 main categories.
Okay, 3 categories.
50% for necessities,
Necessities, got it.
30% for wants,
Want.
and 20% for savings and debt repayment.
50-30-20. I like that. It's easy to remember.
It is. But what if your expenses are really high in this new city?
That's a good question.
And you can't quite fit into those percentages?
What happens then?
That's totally okay. The 50-30-20 rule is just a guideline.
A starting point.
Exactly.
Okay.
You can adjust those percentages based on your unique circumstances.
So it's flexible.
It is. Maybe you need to allocate 60% for necessities.
And 20% for want.
Or even shift some money from wants to savings if you're focused on building your emergency fund.
So I can personalize it.
Absolutely. It's about finding what works best for your situation.
I'm liking this 50-30-20 rule more and more.
Now let's talk about reverse budgeting. This one's a bit different.
Okay, I'm intrigued. How does it work?
With reverse budgeting, you flip the script.
Flip the script.
Instead of starting with your income and then deciding how much to save, you start with your savings goals.
Interesting.
You decide how much you want to save each month, and then allocate the remaining money to your expenses.
So it's like saying, this is how much I'm committed to saving, no matter what.
You got it. It's a great method for people who are highly motivated by their savings goals
Okay, so for goal-oriented people.
and are willing to adjust their spending habits accordingly.
So it requires some discipline.
It does, but it can be really empowering.
I can see that. Knowing that you're hitting your savings targets consistently,
Exactly. But it does require a willingness to make trade-offs.
that makes sense. You might have to cut back in some areas to reach those savings goals.
Right. But the reward is knowing you're building a strong financial foundation.
No matter which method I choose, it seems like budgeting is all about making choices
It is.
and being intentional with my money.
Absolutely. But even with the best intentions, we all make mistakes sometimes.
That's true. What are some common budgeting pitfalls people fall into?
We all make budgeting blunders from time to time.
Like what?
Well, a really common one is underestimating our spending.
Underestimating.
Yeah, we might think we only spend a certain amount on groceries or eating out.
But in reality, it's actually way more.
Exactly. That's why tracking our spending is so crucial.
It helps us get real with ourselves.
It does. And then we can adjust our budget accordingly.
So we're not setting ourselves up for failure with unrealistic expectations.
Right. Another common mistake is forgetting about those irregular expenses.
Irregular expenses, what are those?
Things that don't come up every month,
Okay, I see.
like seasonal costs, maybe winter heating bills if you live somewhere that gets cold,
That makes sense.
or annual fees for things like car insurance or subscriptions.
Oh, it's going to sneak up on you.
They can. So it's important to factor those into our budget.
Even though they don't happen every month.
Right. Otherwise, we can get caught off guard when they do come due.
That's a good point. And our sources also mention the importance of paying attention to recurring expenses,
Oh, yes. Those can be sneaky budget drainers.
like subscriptions and memberships,
Exactly. It's so easy to sign up for a streaming service or a gym membership.
and then completely forget about it.
And those monthly fees, even if they're small, can really add up over time.
So it's like a slow leak in our bank account.
It is. So make it a habit to review your subscriptions regularly.
And see if there are any I can cancel.
Or downgrade.
Maybe I don't need all those premium features.
Right. Or maybe there's a cheaper alternative out there.
That's a good tip. I'm definitely guilty of letting those subscriptions pile up.
It happens to the best of us. But remember, those small savings can add up.
And free up some room in my budget.
Exactly. It's all about being mindful of where our money is going.
So what else should we be mindful of when it comes to budgeting?
It's important to be aware of our spending habits, both good and bad.
Habits.
Yeah, like, do we tend to overspend when we're stressed or emotional?
Oh, that's me for sure.
Or do we make impulse purchases without thinking them through?
Guilty as charged.
Once we identify those negative spending patterns,
We can start to break them.
exactly, and replace them with healthier habits.
Like saving up for those treats instead of buying them impulsively.
Or setting spending limits for ourselves.
That's a good idea.
Yeah.
I could set a limit for how much I spend on eating out each week.
Exactly. It's all about finding strategies that work for you.
And another game changer our sources mentioned was automation
Oh, yes. Automation can be a lifesaver.
when it comes to budgeting.
Absolutely. Setting up automatic transfers for savings and bill payments can make a huge difference.
It takes the effort out of it.
It does. You don't even have to think about it.
The money just goes where it needs to go,
And it helps you avoid late fees and penalties,
which can be costly.
especially in a new country where you might not be familiar with all the systems.
I'm starting to see how budgeting can actually reduce stress
It can.
instead of adding to it.
When you have a plan and you're in control of your money,
It frees up mental space to focus on other things.
exactly. It's about taking charge of your finances and empowering yourself.
I love that. So as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave our listeners with a thought-provoking question.
Okay.
What could budgeting help you achieve in your new country?
Ooh, that's a good one. What dreams could you make a reality?
Maybe it's about having the financial freedom to explore your new city,
Or travel to different places.
or even start a new business.
Or pursue a new career path.
The possibilities are endless.
They are.
It's about having peace of mind, knowing you have a financial safety net.
In case of unexpected events or emergencies,
Whatever your goals are,
Budgeting can help you create a path to achieve them.
It's about taking control of your finances, making informed choices, and building a solid foundation for your future.
So take that first step.
Experiment with different budgeting methods
Find what works best for you.
and start building that brighter financial future.
You got this.
Remember, budgeting is a journey.
Not a destination.
There will be bumps along the way.
But the key is to keep learning
Keep adjusting.
and keep moving forward.
Thanks for joining us on the Deep Dive.
It's been a pleasure exploring the world of budgeting with you.
We'll see you next time for another exciting adventure in knowledge.
Until then, keep learning, keep growing, and keep diving deep.